Hi class, and welcome to Lesson 7 in our study of the book of Acts. I'm Dr. Arnett, and I'm glad to be your professor for this course. Now in this lesson, we're going to look at Acts chapter 12, and we've entitled this chapter or this lesson, Persecution and Retribution. Let's look at Acts 12, 1 through 19. Now I'll expect you to have already read this in preparation for the video lectures, so I'll not take time to read through every verse. What we find here in chapter 12 is that James, the brother of John, was put to death by Herod Agrippa I. He was the first apostle to be martyred. Now notice that the early church did not replace James as they did Judas, because Judas abdicated his position, whereas James did not. Herod Agrippa I ruled from AD 37 to 44. Now he was the grandson of Herod the Great. Because the Jews were pleased with the martyrdom of James, Agrippa consequently arrested Peter and intended to put him to death as well. But he intended to do this after Passover. He wanted to make it a public event, again, because he thought it would please the Jews. The term Passover and the designation unleavened bread were used interchangeably, as indicated here. Passover was a one-day event, and unleavened bread was a week-long festival that began the day after Passover. Although two distinct holidays, as one of the pilgrim festivals, the 8 days were collectively called either Passover and or unleavened bread. Now Peter, he's arrested, and he's guarded very well. 4 squads made up of 4 soldiers each were assigned to him. Look, rotation consisted of 2 soldiers who stood guard outside the cell and then 2 others who were chained to him. He was guarded extremely well. Well, an angel appeared to Peter the night before his execution. And it's kind of funny, but Peter had to be awakened. He was sleeping soundly, even thinking that the next day would be his last. Miraculously, the chains on Peter's hands fell off, and the gates opened for them as they escaped from the prison. The guards were not awakened. Peter thought he was having a vision and didn't realize it was real until the angel left him in the street of the city. Luke used this episode to highlight the effectiveness of prayer, and in a somewhat humorous way, to portray the church's surprise when their prayers were answered upon Peter's release. He noted twice that the church was fervently praying for Peter. Peter, upon his release, immediately went to Mary's house. Now, she was the mother of John Mark. John Mark is the author of the second gospel. It bears his name, Gospel of Mark. And she held church meetings in her home. When Rhoda, the servant girl, announced that Peter was standing outside, the rest of the group did not believe her. Their statement that it was his spirit is reflected in the Jewish belief that a person's spirit could be seen by others just before his or her death. Peter ordered the group to silence when they did let him in, and this was a serious matter, as the soldiers may have been searching for him. He gave testimony to his miraculous escape, and he told them to report it to James, who was the leader of the Jerusalem church, and then Peter departed to an undisclosed location. The guards who were responsible for Peter's imprisonment were executed. Why? Because they let him escape. In accordance with Justinian's code, they suffered the penalty assigned to their prisoner. Now let's look at verses 20 to 25 in Acts chapter 12. In this section, Luke narrated how Agrippa came to his demise in Caesarea when he refused to give glory to God, when a crowd heralded him as a god. Josephus actually records this event, and he described the event in this way. He said, on the second day of these shows, he put on a garment made wholly of silver and of a texture wonderful, and came into the theater early in the morning, at which time the silver of his garment, being illuminated by the fresh reflection of the rays upon it, shone out after a surprising manner, and was so resplendent as to spread a horror over those who looked intently upon him. And presently his flatterers cried out, one from one place and another from another, though not for his good, he was a god. Upon this the king did neither rebuke them nor reject their impious flattery. A severe pain also arose in his belly, and began in a most violent manner. And when he had been quite worn out by the pain in his belly for 5 days, he departed this life, being in the 54th year of his age, and in the 7th year of his reign. That's how Josephus describes this event that we read about here regarding Agrippa. Now, although Luke did not mention the 5 days that Herod suffered before his death, he did allow for it. While Herod met his end, notice verse 24, the word of the Lord continued to grow and to be multiplied. This means that the message of Jesus was spreading even farther into the world. And in 1225, Paul and Barnabas with John Mark returned to Antioch from their famine relief visit in Jerusalem, which had begun in 1127 through 30. That's chapter 12, and this was a brief overview of that chapter. I hope that God will bless you as you continue your studies in Acts, and I look forward to our next time together when we will get to look at the first missionary journey. God bless you.